Welcome to the Musician, Technician, Entrepreneur Podcast, coming to you from the Digital Audio Recording Arts at the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois. My name is Albie Odom, and my co-host is Jeff Jaskowiak. Today, our guest is Frank Pappalardo. He is an accomplished audio engineer in both the studio and live sound from Chicago, Illinois. He's worked with the who's who's list of world-class artists, 50,000 career hours engineering, 300 album credits, 6,000 minutes engineering music television, and 60 live music DVDs. He's best known for his 14-year tenure at Soundstage on PBS. He also worked closely with Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys on his solo record, Imagination, and recorded and mixed the last Beach Boys 50th anniversary record, and many, many more. Come along with us as Frank talks about his workflow, techniques, gear talk, and the keys to being a successful audio engineer. Thanks for joining us today, Frank.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. Well, I'd like to just start with, if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and let us know,
Well,
who you are.
my name's Frank Pappalardo. I'm an audio engineer. I do both studio work and live. I'm probably best known for the TV show Soundstage on PBS. I record and mix that show and have for the past 12 to 13 years. We have over 200 episodes. And I also do live sound, sometimes for big acts coming through, but mostly for local acts. I really enjoy the live sound immediacy of it, the socialness of it. You know, when I'm working on Soundstage, I'm basically alone in a room with no windows and no one to talk to. So I like getting out into the world. So. And I've been doing this since 1983, end of 1983.
Do you mind talking about how you got it even in audio?
The whole history in a nutshell. Little kid, went to my parents at 4 years old. Mommy, Daddy, I want to play the drums. They said, okay, and handed me a guitar. And so at 6 years old, I started playing guitar. And did all right. I kind of liked it, but then I had a older instructor that was trying to get me to play 5'2", Eyes Are Blue, classics. And then I finally got a young guitar teacher that was in a band, and he taught me ear training, how to figure songs out myself. It started with him charting things out and giving me the chords. I remember the first rock song I ever learned was Honky Tonk Woman, and the second one was Proud Mary. And, I was just like hooked from there. It excited me more than Spanish Eyes. And he was very into ear training, and he started like that. And then it got to the point where, it was back when there were records. And this was a place called Douglas Music on 79th Street in Chicago. And he would just pull a 45 out, and that would be my lesson for the week. And it went from him charting it out to him writing just the chords that are in the song. Like it's, if it was Honky Tonk Woman, he'd write G, C, D 7th.
Okay.
And then it was up to me to hear the changes and know when to change. And then to the point of he would make me figure things out. The other thing about him is he could play leads. And when I remember when I was young, I was the only kid that could play solos, nice. An ad lib, right. And when I say that, we're talking about 10 years old, 11
right.
years old. Nowadays there's every kid alive shredding on YouTube that, are better than anybody you've ever seen before, and boys, girls, everything. But back in the day, if you could play notes before you were 15 years old, you were happening. So I continued on with guitar lessons. I became intrigued with recording. I actually bought a 4-track when I was 12 years old, a TX 3340, and what I used to do with it was lay down chords and then play solos over the chords.
Nice.
And that was my first foray into recording. And then fast forward, I had a band, and the band played a lot. I think almost did 200 dates one year, the first year out of college. I played all through high school, all through college, and then was a full-time musician for 2 years. At that point,
did you go to school for music?
No, I went to. I have a degree in speech communications and psychology. When I was coming up, there were no schools, there were no programs like here at St. Francis or anywhere else.
Right.
So I went
maybe classically trained or something like that.
Well, yeah, if you want to take music classes and learn theory, but there weren't
Right.
audio engineering classes,
Right.
nothing like that.
Right.
So I went to the studio that I had made a record at, which was Tanglewood in Brookfield, Illinois, and went to them and said, hey, I'm really interested in this. I'd really like to learn. And they listened to me and said, well, you sound serious. You could start hanging. So basically I hung out for 4 months for free and was an assistant, and then started getting paid $2 an hour. And then in 1985, I went to a studio musician. I said, I like this, but how in the world do you make a living? I can't really pay any bills at $2 an hour. I'm living with my parents and, making $6,000 a year. And he's like, got to go downtown. You got to go downtown. You can't do it out here in the burbs. I'm like, all right. So eventually, River North Recorders was built, which was right next to CRC across the alley. I was the daytime assistant, nighttime engineer. I basically lived there. That was when I was 25 years old, and I did everything. I learned all different types of music. I would, 1 minute I'd be engineering some band that wanted to sound like Def Leppard, and the next day I'd be doing a gospel record, and the next day I'd be doing a jingle. And doing jingles really helped my engineering, in that you become very fast, and you can't screw around. You've got like 10 guys out there getting paid a lot of money, and they expect you to get it like in the first or second take, which means you can't be sitting there saying, I think I got a level. It's got to be like, okay, next. And these guys would walk out and go to another studio and do another jingle. Back in the when there was a jingle scene here in Chicago, and there was a big one. So that was that. And like I said, I've done lots of different kinds of music. There was 1 year where I did mostly dance music, four on the floor, house kind of stuff. There was a year where I did nothing but gospel music all year. That was a pretty cool year. At one point, I had 3 songs on the gospel charts that I had engineered that were in the top 40 on the gospel charts. So I think
now, were you tracking those or producing or mixing?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of them were live, and when they were live ones, I would just mix them. But a lot of them were studio.
Yeah.
And
now, was that at Tanglewood or was that?
No, that was River North.
Okay.
So I was at Tanglewood from 83 to 85,
Okay.
and then went downtown in 85. River North recorded lasts from 85 to 93, and then at that point, I sort of wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a business. Me and my wife started a business. We started doing that. I continued to engineer, but not as much as I was. And then I got a call to somebody called me that I had known from River North, Joe Thomas, that had run River North and produced, called me and asked me if I wanted to work on a Brian Wilson Imagination album. And he
just when you thought you were getting out.
Yeah, just when I thought I was getting out of there. And so I said, all right. And so, I met Brian, and he had a house in St. Charles, and we would go there every day, and he'd come down, and sometimes we'd get some stuff done. Sometimes we'd get nothing done, but we moved along and eventually made the Imagination album. And from there, I just, eventually other things happened. We were trying to find our way on what to do. And it was actually Steve Dahl got the idea to resurrect Soundstage. So there was some kind of a partnership that happened, and we resurrected Soundstage with PBS. And, that's been the greatest job in the world. And I've been very lucky to work with, top artists from Bon Jovi to Tom Petty to Hart, you name it, and all because of being an engineer for a TV show.
So when did Soundstage restart again?
It restarted again in 2002. So I remember that because I recorded Farm Aid 2002, and I remember it was Neil Young, and I remember John Mellencamp was there, and Dave Matthews was there, and so that was a really cool recording, and it was an all-day affair, but that was fun, and
so that's still going. The Soundstage.
Yeah, Soundstage is still going. We did like 10 seasons. Took like a 2 or 3 year hiatus. During that hiatus, I made a Beach Boys record. I mixed the last Beach Boys record that came out, their 50th anniversary record, and recorded most of it. And then...
Is that going to be their last one, you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it'll be definitely the last one that involves Brian, Mike, Bruce, and Al. There's sort of factions now, and I don't think those factions are ever going to get back together again. But it was awesome to have all the surviving Beach Boys in one band.
Yeah, right.
So that was cool, you know. And Brian had never toured before with the Beach Boys, so it was a big deal. You know, everywhere people were coming out because, wow, it's the Beach Boys and Brian's with them. So it was a big thing.
Right.
So,
can you just geek out a little bit about like how Soundstage goes down, like what gear you're using to record and
sure.
And then even post.
When we first in seasons 1 and 2, we used a truck, a really great live recording engineer named Timothy Powell, Metro Mobile, and he recorded it, and then I mixed it. And then we finally got our own truck. We got our own. I think it was a 45-foot semi truck that had both a video control room and an audio control room. Within that, I had 2 Yamaha DM2000s, so I had the 96 inputs, and then we had 96 inputs of Pro Tools, and then we used when we first started, we used DA88s and 78s. Okay, and then those became obsolete, and we moved to Pro Tools, and then also for backup, we used what's called an X48, which is a Tascam product. It's rock solid, but we use that for the backup.
Okay.
And then that went on for a while, and then we eventually the truck was sold because just working on Soundstage wasn't quite enough to keep the truck busy and make the rent on it. And the truck was built specifically for entertainment, which... if you really want to make money with a truck, it's got to be built for sports. So our truck didn't have instant replay or any of the things that trucks usually have to do sports. Okay. So we did other things. I did a lot of comedy. I believe it or not, I recorded one of the biggest selling comedy DVD of all time is Jeff Dunham's Christmas special. The guy with the puppets, and. I recorded that at the Pabst Theater up in Milwaukee, and I've recorded Jim Gaffigan, Cat Williams, so many different comedians, and that's really always fun because it's fun to watch the show, and it's really pretty easy. You've got 12 inputs, and 8 of them are the audience. So, after you've done Josh Groban with an orchestra and you're trying to figure out how to fit it in the 96 inputs, it's kind of a day at the beach when you've got 12 inputs. Here's the comedian, here's the comedian's backup mic, here's the MC mic, here's the playing tracks, and then there's the audience. Right. So, it's a little less to keep in your mind. So we had our own truck. Then we went on the hiatus, we came back, and then we went to what's called fly packs, which is, it's not a truck, but basically your stuff comes in cases and you set it up. We started using, again, a really great live recording guy, Chris Shepard from CRC. He has a company called called American Mobile, and we used him for a while. And he did a great job. And now I've made a commitment. I finally am buying my own gear, and we're using my gear, which is, I have a Pro Tools rig, and the front end of that is a new product called a Waves LV1, which is sort of a virtual console. It's 2 Dell touchscreens for control, and it's Digico mic pre's. And
is that the mating you do, you Digico?
It's one product, and they've already figured it out. It's on the DigiGrid system, so really it's just a Cat 6 cable between the mic pre's and everything else. Everything gets connected with switches and routers and stuff. So it's all self-contained.
Yeah,
it's all self-contained and very light, very small, and very
So it's really
He's
portable, like you
super
can just
portable. I can put it in my car. And that was one of the things that pushed me over, because I really didn't want to be a guy that owned a van or a truck
Right.
or whatever and schlep around all this big equipment. And things are getting smaller and lighter as we go along.
So how do you set up, like when you're doing a soundstage? Where are you in a room?
I'm in a separate room, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But sometimes, and this has happened more than once, for Tom Jones, Regina Spektor, John Cicada, I was the front of house engineer in the room, plus I was doing the recording, and plus I was the production manager.
Whoa.
Oh man,
So that
How did that go?
that was
even
a,
the two, the front
that
of
was
house
a
and-
headache. I mean, it's enough. And the funny thing is, obviously the doing front of house is fun and easy for me. The recording I've got down, but it's a little bit hectic trying to do both at the same time. But the production manager thing, that's a whole nother thing for me. I'm not used to talking on the phone all day, and I'm not used to sending 25 emails in a day or sometimes more, And when you're the production manager, you're in charge of all logistics for everything from ground transportation to, you get involved in hotels and flights and backline equipment and set lists and, what do you guys want for lunch today? I mean, it just runs the gamut. And there's tons of people that are staff at WTTW that do a fantastic job with, doing the ground transportation and doing the things. But you're the first contact with their production manager, and you kind of got to suss things out with them and find out what they need to do their show. And
So do you do that much anymore?
no, if they ask me,
okay.
I mean, it's just like, I think so. I mean, we, I did all right, I'm learning.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a new phase.
That's a new phase for me. And, I don't mind doing it. I think the one thing I try and be is responsive, and I think not everybody is. I try and get back to people, if it's email, within a half hour, if it's a call within 15 minutes, if it's a text, immediately. So I think people appreciate it when they can contact you and not wait forever for you to get back to them. And, it's not easy to do, but I think it's a plus when you can be that way.
So when you do a show like that, how much time commitment is it in terms of weeks, days?
Yeah, it's usually, you would be starting like 6 weeks out and talking to their production manager or their manager. Usually starts with the manager and then gets turned over to the production manager. Managers sometimes will handle things like hotels and transportation, but then when you get into the show, like, hey, what kind of drums you guys want? Sometimes, and the easiest show to do is a show that's a band touring, just it's a stop on their tour, because then they have all their own mics, they have everything. They just come out, they wouldn't drag out their PA or their lights, they'll drag out their consoles. They'll have a front of house engineer, they'll have their own monitor engineer, and they just come in and they do their show and they go off to the next place. But then there's some bands that maybe they haven't played in a while, or maybe they're just putting it together to do Soundstage, and that's a little bit more difficult. They need to rehearse. Sometimes bands will come in and rehearse for 3 to 4 days, and that becomes a whole lot more complicated. So
Well, they rehearse on the soundstage.
right,
Like,
they
right
come to
there, and they rehearse.
WTTW, get up on the
Yeah.
stage and rehearse.
So it's always a live show, and you're recording it.
yes,
right?
always, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always posted too. We never do anything like live over the internet or anything like that. It's sometimes like these fests, like Bonnaroo and
Well, doesn't
Coachella.
Chris do that?
Yeah,
Chris, he
Chris
where he
does
the
do
5
that.
ones.
That's his thing.
Like live streaming.
Yeah.
Do you do this in 5/1, or is this just a
Yeah.
stereo mix?
Yeah, no, it depends. It depends. Sometimes it's stereo. Most of the times it's 5/1.
Okay.
I mean, all the ones we did in the past were mixed in 5/1.
Okay.
If you're doing a DVD, then yes, it's all you got to do 5/1 for a DVD. People expect it, and if they spend money for a Blu-ray and they don't have 5/1, they're gonna be mad. Yeah.
So then you bring it home and mix it, or you have a
Well, no,
place
there's a
that you mix, or-
studio in St. Charles.
Okay.
It's a post house. It's not a public studio for anyone else to come into, but we have 2 edit suites, with equipment and an editor, and we have what's called a core, which is basically a place to put all the machines so we don't have to hear them. Like my actual tower computer is in the core, and then other things like clocking and things like that are in the core. And then I have an audio studio. I have I have a digital design console. It's really a huge one. It's big. And I have a screen that I can watch, a projection screen if I want to watch the show up there, or sometimes I just, we'll just watch it in a small box on the computer that I'm working on, either way. So usually starts with me giving the editor a rough mix, him cutting, then him giving me a rough cut so I have something to look at, because it's really impossible to mix sound for picture without the picture.
Yeah.
You'll never do a good job. And one thing that we try very hard on Soundstage is to get the audience right. And I think it's where a lot of shows fall short, where you see a shot of people going crazy, but you don't hear them at all. Or you'll see people clapping and you don't hear the clapping, because it's a real art to not blow your mix by putting up those ambient mics, but you've got to hear those people and you got to hear what they're doing. So I spend at least a third of my time on any show working on the audience.
So how many mics do you usually use for a soundstage audience?
There's 6 minimum. Okay. There's usually shotguns off the stage pointing at the people.
At the audience.
And then there's usually a Shure VP 88, a stereo mic at the front of house position. So hopefully it sounds best there, because that's where the sound guy's at. Yeah. And then we have like KM84s hanging straight down onto the audience. And those are pretty far away from those people. And that's,
couple pairs of those.
Yeah. What?
Couple pairs.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's 3.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure I like 3, but we got 3. We can do left, center, right, because it's kind of the way the room's set up. It sort of makes sense. And one of the tricks of recording audience is to get the different distances. You want to get people close, so you hear that clapping, but then you also want to get people far so you get a sense of the size of the room. So that's why there's really the different distances. After I record a show, I usually time align the audience. Usually the far away mics are too far away, and I'll time align them back into, like I'll take a transient, like a snare drum hit, and just get them all
scooted.
Yeah, not right perfectly on top of each other, but there's too much of a delay to bring up those mics. Otherwise, it just sounds like a slap echo or whatever.
Right.
So,
do you usually leave those mics in the mix? I'm sure you automate them, write them, but
that VP88 a lot of times just stays stagnant straight across in the mix.
There. Yeah.
The shotguns and those other mics are rode up if the audience reacts, or of course in between songs, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
That's
pretty cool. I'd like to see it sometime.
Yeah, well, I invited you guys, and you didn't show up.
Well, we'll come again.
I invited you to Bad Company. What more do you want?
Don't remind me.
Yeah, I guess you could see them anytime.
There was a good reason. I don't remember, but there was a darn good
you better have
reason
had a good reason for not. That was
Frank,
a great
I
show.
made some coffee. I don't know if you want.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
And that show will be on in February. I finally know when something's going to be on. And the first show of this run that we've just went through this past year, Tom Jones will be on TV on December 10th. So that'll be a pledge.
Is it every week then?
No, that's a pledge special. So they'll be, playing that show for pledge, offering a video DVD, audio CD, and I don't know what else. Blu-ray probably.
So now your whole situation is now you do all this production manager for the particular artists. You get all that set up. Then you still do all the things you always have done. Is doing
I'm doing it for Soundstage, but this is a relatively new thing. I just started doing this production manager stuff in the last 6 months. So it wasn't
what kind of led you to that? I mean, it seems like it's again morphing another phase of Frank.
It's like, we had a guy that did it, and he was great, and a guy that's been in the industry for like 20 years and was Fleetwood Mac's road manager, but he lives in California and he had other commitments and he couldn't do it. And rather than trying to search and bring somebody in that didn't know the people at WTTW, then they said, hey, why don't you do it? You could do it. I'm like, I don't want to do it. And they're like, oh, you can do it. I'm like, I don't think I should do it. And they're like, oh, just go ahead and do it. And so then I did it. And then I said, I don't know if I want to do this. And then they say, well, you know what? You should just keep doing it. So
Done.
So that you envision that for the next few years. That's
I don't know.
I
Unless I do something drastically wrong, maybe. I like learning, and when it comes to audio, you never learn everything and stuff. But I felt pretty comfortable in my role as recording the show. I've been doing it for a long, long time, and then the front of house thing just started with a show, with a Cornerstone show, which was all the Chicago groups, the Ides of March, the Buckinghams, New Colony Six, Crying Shames, American Breed. And since I already had done sound for the Ides of March, it made sense for me to do sound for that show. And things went well and everybody was happy. And so then whenever a group is coming through and they don't have a specific sound guy that works with them all the time, then I'll do it. So
what is your percentage of time that you do live sound as opposed to doing stuff for?
The live soundstage thing, I would say like 2 or 3 out of every 10 shows. And then as far as, weekend stuff here and there, it's not like every Friday and Saturday or anything like that. It's seasonal too.
Do you work with bands much, Frank? Like producing like local or indie bands?
I don't have a lot of time
to
to do that. When I do, I try and just do one at a time because it becomes too much. And those bands, they tend to move slowly and make decisions slowly and do everything slowly.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to dedicate the time. But I did it more like a year or two ago. Moving forward from today, I think I'm going to be so busy I don't see myself doing a whole lot of that. I love doing it, and I love helping local artists if I can, but there's only so much time in a day.
So are you kind of looking for more help, more interns and things for the things you're doing? Or?
I could always use help. I certainly could always use help on the live stuff. Sometimes on the soundstage stuff, it's hard because it's a union place, and they get very
finicky.
Yeah, they don't like people walking around they don't know, put it that way. But, I always willing to help people learn.
So if they were going to try to be involved in the soundstage, that'd be in their interest to get into the union, into the Chicago local.
Yeah. Let's see, off the top of my head, I don't know the name, but but I mean, there's no point in being in the union unless you've got work, because otherwise you're just going to be giving them money for nothing.
Yeah, but isn't it a catch-22 though? If you're not in the union, you can't even get in there.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, there's a lot of cool things. Being in the union. I'm in the IBEW, is the union that I'm in. You can do one thing. I'm a little overqualified, but I would love to do football. I would love to be the guy that stands there with that parabolic microphone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just like sports, and I like football, and I just think that would be cool. Maybe I could get wiped out like that guy did last week, where he was stupid enough to run in front of the Minnesota Vikings and get smushed. Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give some of these young engineers that we work with? And
I think, trying to get your foot in the door anywhere, be flexible, and that audio is audio. I mean, I could sit there and I could do a mix with 96 over 100 tracks, but I'll also go out and I'll stand there with a pole in my hand and have a little mixer that has 3 channels and have 2 people on a lav mic and hold the pole. And because I really feel like audio is audio, and if you're going to make a living in Chicago doing audio, you can't get all super picky, especially when you're young right off the bat. You kind of got to take what you can get. and you have to realize that there's other avenues. There's a lot of plays that are done here. There's other things other than just music. There's not a lot of guys that are going to be lucky enough to get the job that I got to record Soundstage and mix it. There's only one or two of those jobs, but there are jobs, and I think you have to be willing to go out and try and get your foot in the door. And if you do well, then you'll get hired. I had a guy from the college here, St. Francis, come out and intern. He came out twice for free, and then I really, really needed him on a really high-pressure job, and I hired him, and he did fantastically, and it was a good week for him. He took my place. He did a setup for me, and then was there the day of the show recording John Mellencamp, and then he took my place doing live sound for the Ides of March, and they liked him, and they would use him again, and for him that was a big week. He did well, so it can work out. You just have to get yourself out there.
So do you think that the avenue to start is doing more live sound as opposed to trying to get more studio work?
I don't know. I guess it really depends on what you're interested in. I wouldn't want someone to go try and do live sound if that's not what they want to do. Mm-hmm. I think most importantly is to figure out exactly what you want to do and then give it 1,000% effort, and go in that direction. But if you're in the live, well, then you probably could, there's opportunities. There's sound companies. They get super busy in the summer with fests and things, and they take on extra help. You could learn a lot there. But like I said, if you want to do music engineering, then the best thing to do is go out and find bands or the best musicians you can find and record them. That's what you do. Always try and gravitate towards the most talented musicians you can find.
So if you're going to suggest a kind of a basic rig for somebody starting out that would like to do that, wants to be doing recording bands and working these things out, what would you say, like number of tracks, what kind of rig, what would be basic plugins that they kind of a layout of expense that they should?
What I would do if I was trying to do it on the cheap and just get going, I would get myself a Pro Tools rig with one of the lesser interfaces that aren't super expensive. I would definitely go to Pro Tools. A lot of people do things in Logic, and Logic is really good for music creation. I don't think it's as good for capture of music as Pro Tools is. So I would get a small Pro Tools rig, and then I just go out and buy an X32. For $2,400, you got 32 mic pre's and a board. You could go out there and you could rent it. Yeah. You could use it in a studio situation. I've recorded shows before with an X32 comedy shows. One cable out of it into either a FireWire or USB cable into your rig, and you're recording 32 tracks. And so
is that one you use quite a bit, X32?
No, live a lot. I see it a lot, but right. I'm at a sort of a upper level than that. But you asked me, like, if somebody was getting started, what would be a good way? I think that's a way to get going under $4,000. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And really have some equipment to do stuff.
That's a lot of bang for your buck. When you really think about it.
It really is. Where can you?
So do you own a lot of mics?
No. I never was really a gear collector. This LV1 is really the first time I'm buying gear. I certainly wish I could have bought some mics early on in my career. I tried to. Some of the deals fell through. I tried to get a U47, and the guy changed his mind. But, early in my career, I didn't have the money to buy them. Now, it's like they're so cost prohibitive, older mics, and I don't really need to have them because everywhere I go, it's provided. So, I've never really been a gearhead where I go out and buy stuff constantly because, it becomes obsolete as you carry it to the car.
Yeah. Except for mics have a little bit better.
Well,
Nice
vintage mics. Yes, I think microphones are a good investment, and so are vintage guitars. But I've just never had the extra money to be able to do that. It's I got a family of 5 people, and
Right.
they all went to college, and hopefully they're going to finish up this year. So they all went to private school.
Ouch.
So yeah.
So what do you think of our setup here?
I think it's awesome. I think, what you're doing with the students is great. I think there's so many opportunities to get their feet wet, and, it looks, composing, mixing, recording. I think it's a really good recording studio you've got out there. And, the students seem really enthusiastic about what they're doing, which, for me, that's a big thing. Enthusiasm is really an important thing. I mean, I'll take attitude over skill every time. You can learn, but you can't really teach somebody to have a good attitude. Sort of comes with their personality.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming, Frank.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
Right on the money.
Right on the money. I'm only being paid till 5 o'clock. And right now it's 5 o'clock. It'll be $1 a minute from here on in.
Thanks again, bud.
Let's go find my friend, John.